All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another episode of the Vitality Blueprint. Today's guest, we have Ryan Griggs. He's a bit of a legend in the regenerative farming space. He's also a business owner of the Regenaissance, which is a very awesome brand that I recommend you check out and get behind. So welcome on, man. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
That's awesome, dude. So tell me about like the story of the Regenaissance and like how you started it.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of backstory leading up to even just having the idea for Regenaissance, because I had no aspirations to ever start a business. But taking back to the start of the pandemic, essentially right as it started, March of 2020, I found out that my older brother had stage 3 colon cancer, and that obviously took me aback. My whole life I've had a pretty straightforward life, didn't have any crazy trials and tribulations until then. And so once I received that news, I knew going into, if it would ever progress to stage 4, I would go back to my hometown and be his caretaker. So unfortunately, December of 2020, I found out that it did progress to stage 4. So the first 6 months of the following year in 2021, I took off from work because I come from a tech background. I used to work for IBM and went back home. And for the first 2.5 months of that time, I was in the same room with him. Just watching cancer, all of the opioids and treatment and everything, essentially destroy him. And then he spent the last 2.5 months of that time and essentially his life at the hospital. And that was obviously as hellish as you can possibly imagine. And on top of that, I was helping take care of my mother, who in 2019, she was forced to retire from her health because she had shingles, gout, sleep apnea, coronary artery disease, so the most common form of heart disease. Her kidney and liver were failing, but she was deemed and she needed transplants for both. But with her heart condition, she was deemed inoperable. And then I'm pretty sure in total, by the end of it, she had 14 liters of fluid drained from her lungs. I think it was around like 6 different trips to the hospital.
All right.
So yeah, that 6 months was obviously hell on earth. My dad was there, but he has bad back and bad knees and joints and whatnot. So I was essentially the only able-bodied in the household. My brother ended up passing away on June 11th of 2022, of 2021. It was actually 3 days before his 33rd birthday. So I knew pretty much going into, as soon as I started taking care of him, I knew I was not going back to IBM. I didn't know what the hell I was going to be doing with my life, but I just knew that it didn't feel fulfilling. And my whole life, I've always wanted to bet on myself, but I was always too scared. And after going through something like I did with my brother, I knew right away that this is my time to actually bet on myself. So I withdrew my 401k from IBM. I quit my job. A lot of it was because I had crazy bad PTSD after my brother died. The first 4 months after he passed, I was pretty much a vegetable. I stayed in my apartment a lot, but this is also where Twitter really comes into play for my life because it genuinely saved my life. All of my best friends I met through that. It's led me to my business. But through that rest of 2021, I was essentially learning and unlearning as much as possible through Twitter. I had found myself through all different parts of Twitter, like health, esoteric health, business, all kinds of parts. And so I was starting to slowly figure things out. And then fast forward to 2022, the whole entire year I had planned for this giant road trip in America because my brother and I, we never traveled together, but we've always had a fascination to that and culture and food. And that was the thing to really keep the hope alive as we were together. So obviously that didn't happen. So I just hit this huge road trip around America. But at the beginning of this, in 2022, I learned about regenerative agriculture on Twitter. And that was my really light bulb moment of this is where I want to be. Because I knew I was probably going to gravitate towards health and nutrition after everything with my family. But yeah, agriculture, that was a huge light bulb moment for me because I realized, I don't know if I've ever been on a ranch or a farm. I never went to farmers markets. I just bought whatever was in the stores. I've been more quote unquote health conscious than the normal American, but at the same time, I was just like everyone, just really disconnected from my food. So I realized that was a huge missing link in my life, and I wanted to really dive into that. So as I was doing this road trip, I made some stops to a couple ranches in Colorado, and I just remember staying at one friend's ranch and actually experiencing all of that, having the farm fresh food, the beef that they had from their cattle, the produce from their small garden in the back. It was genuinely a life-changing meal because again, I'd realized this is nothing like anything I've had from stores. I've been missing this my whole life. It tastes so good. I mean, I still literally salivate just thinking about that meal. Yeah, so I knew I was hitting the right steps and I was on the right track of what I was wanting to do. So I continued on this road trip, and then I knew I wanted to start working on farms and ranches. So I found this organization, WOOF, which is an acronym WWOOF, which stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And it's a global organization. It's kind of an Airbnb style on the website, to where they have everything laid out, their expectations, and you can just apply for however much time that they would like. And so I found a farm in Pennsylvania that I ended up working on, I would say, in September of 2022, for about 2 months, 2.5 months. And as I was there, I shared my story on Twitter about everything with my brother and my mom, and then my goals with switching into agriculture and just really sharing everything I was going to do on the farm. And it went viral on Twitter overnight. And then I really had some realizations there I'm not the only one having the same feeling that, oh shit, after the pandemic, and realizing everything that's going on in America with our healthcare, food systems, and then realizing they have been so disconnected from their food. So I realized I had something here of I could help really bridge this massive gap between people that produce the food and everybody else, because obviously we die without good food. We've gotten to this point with good food. So I just continued on working on the farm and sharing that. But my health was getting so bad, because I've been glossing over a lot of stuff. But obviously, with all my brother's stuff, that just destroyed my mental and my gut. And I was emotionally eating a lot of garbage food. So I really nuked my gut. And no one in the healthcare system could help me at all. They actually made things a lot worse. They misdiagnosed everything. So I went to Twitter again and found independent help. He had me take 2 blood tests, one for a vitamin and mineral panel, and then a thyroid panel. That answered all of my health issues, which is really irritating because those 2 tests, not a single doctor recommended me taking. And I spent so much money on tests, probably 30 to 40 grand over the course of 16 to 18 months. And again, that's just another one of the reasons why I have Regenaissance, is because even though there are well-intentioned folks in our healthcare system, they will fail you just because they've been failed from an educational standpoint. So continuing on that farm, I actually had to leave early because, again, my health was getting so bad. But then I found out why from these tests is because I had Hashimoto's. So it's a severe form of hypothyroidism. And on top of that, I was deficient in a lot of vitamins and minerals like vitamin B1. That was a huge one. So I had this huge break of about a month and a half between this farm in Pennsylvania, and then February of the following year, I was going to work on a bison ranch in Montana. And so a week before that in Montana, I was in Boise, Idaho to just explore the area and then make my way up to Montana. I started taking this B1 supplement, and I think my body was just in such disarray. I mean, my colon was so inflamed that I had a really severe reaction to that supplement, to where over the course of 3 days, I went to the bathroom about 90 times, all bloody, had crazy upper abdominal pain, lower abdominal pain, making all kinds of gas noises, wasn't eating or drinking anything at all. And then I remember it was a Friday night, realizing my only 2 options are urgent care and ER. And obviously this was way too serious to do urgent care, so I knew the next day I was gonna have to go to ER. So the next morning rolls around, it was like 6:30, 7 a.m. I had to head straight to the bathroom. And because of everything with my brother and mom, my body, I mean, still to this day, is pretty much in default fight or flight mode. So I'm a very light sleeper, and I wear headphones for rain sounds. And I remember I'm sitting there on the bathroom, and I started profusely sweating, thinking, okay, I'm about to throw up here. But then the rain sounds started to really get muffled, and then my eyes were closing, and I realized it's not that. I'm actually passing out. But I didn't know why. In my head, I was thinking, is there like an organ failure right here? Because I'm in this Airbnb by myself, and no one's coming until the next day when I check out. So I was thinking, holy shit, if I pass out here, I could literally die. So I hobbled to the bed, started really talking to myself, and then took really deep breaths. For whatever reason, that actually worked. It's so wild. Even this, I've said this story so many times, and it still blows my mind that happened. Because that was genuinely the most terrifying experience of my life. I genuinely thought I could die there, but I was just telling myself to not pass out and just really focus on my breath. And slowly but surely, my eyes were opening. My hearing came back. I drove straight to the ER. They did a bunch of tests, and they essentially said that I had a really inflamed colon and that I should get a colonoscopy and endoscopy. And I knew the quickest way to get tests for that was to go back to Austin, since I'd been living here since 2018. This is also another frustrating aspect. So they sent me away. They gave me some medications and whatnot. And then that same night, I could feel myself almost on the verge of passing out again. So I drove back to the ER. And it makes sense now. I was severely dehydrated through that whole experience, and they never gave me any fluids. So that second time, they gave me 2 liters of fluid. I felt so much better because of their fuck up, because that's on them. That's their job to know that. I got an additional $3,000 hospital bill. Fortunately, I don't have health insurance. I have what's called crowd health. I only end up paying $500 of that. So again, that's just another example. I could give so many examples of healthcare really failing, but that's just another one, because now I think about families that might not realize that, and then they've got to pay that. And in America, a lot of people go financially bankrupt because of healthcare like that. So I come back to Austin, in the worst health of my life, essentially. But I knew I was going back to this ranch in Montana in about May. So I had about 2 to 3 months of recovery time to just relax and try to just get my bearings straight, because mentally it was huge struggle, because I finally had figured out my life and the direction I was taking, and then here's just another pretty much bitch slap from life telling me to figure it out. And as I was recovering, I was just on a walk, and just a random idea popped into my head about an apparel brand revolved around everything that I've been trying to do, and the whole focus has just been trying to educate and bridge this ever-widening gap of the food producers and consumers. And so I started doing research and realizing there's no cool-looking apparel at all in the context of agriculture. I mean, there's the branding for each individual farm and ranch, but they don't want to scale and make their own apparel brand. They want to farm or ranch. And so I did not have the idea for the name of Regenaissance at first. I just knew that I had this apparel idea. I knew right away that, so the shirt behind me, that's the main shirt, and that's a mustard color. I knew right away in my head that I envisioned that. I don't know how that came to be, but that happened. And then I remembered a year prior to this, I was with my friend Coastbrah, and we were actually going to do a podcast together called the Regenaissance Podcast, to where I was going to be talking to regenerative agriculture folks, because that's where I was really gravitated towards, but then also holistic health and esoteric, which that's pretty much Case's bread and butter. So once I had that idea, I realized, oh, that's the perfect word. I talked to him and realized that the Regenaissance works so well for everything I'm trying to do. So it takes 2 words: regenerative. So with regenerative agriculture, that should be essentially the principles that we implement for our agriculture, and it's really starting to change, because it's also not something that's new. Regenerative agriculture is not new. It's essentially aligning with nature rather than against, which is what conventional ag does. But then also, our bodies are so resilient, and even though we can completely destroy it with modern food and all of these other modern toxicities, you can really heal within. So take your liver, for example. You can destroy that, but over time it will essentially regenerate and heal. And then the second word, Renaissance. It's starting to really happen a lot like Liver King, for example, he came onto the scene, exploded with just the talk of liver pills, but nose to tail. You go into grocery stores in America, everywhere's stocked full of different bone broths now. You can get bone marrow, you can get frozen beef liver at Whole Foods. So a lot of these things that we used to eat is really coming back to making it to the mainstream. But I think just overall, people are just waking up again to what's happened to our food and health systems in America and globally. And really just trying to go back to having these relationships with our food and with farms and ranches. So that word just works so well. And then lastly, I was very intentional with using the bison as the logo because they're just so majestic, incredible animals. They're actually one of the national animals for America now, but they're also huge for regenerating the land. Back in its heyday in the 1800s in America, the Great Plains, the grasses were as tall as horses, the most fertile land in the world, the best farmland in the world, and bison were a huge reason for that. So that's essentially why I had all of that idea. And then secondly, so I have this shirt with Regenaissance. The other one is tagline Raw's Law, because the more I started learning about raw milk, the more I realized how much we've been misled on that and how much of a true superfood raw milk is. I know you yourself is a huge proponent of that.
Totally.
So yeah, the whole goal of that was just raising awareness through all these things that we've been misled on, I'll say, and just really trying to help educate. Because also I was vegan for 2.5 years. I'm very against all of that now. And again, why I try to help educate, because now they're trying to pin animal agriculture on climate change, trying to tell us that steak and butter causes cancer and raw milk will kill you and it should be pasteurized, all these things. That's why I have Regenaissance, because we're tribal by nature. That's why I had a parallels, the idea in general. So I realized that this could be a great way to build the movement around that. And as I was doing all of that still with the idea, my mother's health still continued to decline. I knew going into last year that it was going to be her last year on Earth too, because when I traveled in 2022, I went back home and she was just in horrible, horrible shape. So that was also just a huge struggle mentally last year as I was still trying to build this brand and launch it, because I had a launch date for May 28th, which was Memorial Day weekend last year. And Mother's Day hit, and that hit me like a train wreck, because I had realized I had suppressed everything with my mom because I was trying to just overcome everything with my brother and obviously myself and figure out my life. And so that was essentially my grieving. That day was pretty hell. I just essentially emoted everything that had just stored in my body for that long. And so that was in the back of my head as I was trying to continue on building this brand. I was barely getting by with everything. Essentially I was barely alive at that time. But fortunately, I've had the best support in the world. And when my launch happened, I had a great launch and really stoked, amazing support, because it launched at 12 p.m. that Sunday. I was literally about to head to my friend's cookout around 4 p.m. and I get a call from my aunt saying that my mom died. And so it was just wild to where it's crazy how fast life changes, good and bad, because again, my life had been pretty solid and standard for so long, and it just tanked with all my brother's stuff. I'm finally on the up and up with figuring out my life, and then in a 3-month span, essentially from my idea to launch, that's how long it took to build my brand. Really fast turnaround time. I was absolutely thrilled with everything. So again, one of the highest points of my life, launching a business, to not even 24 hours later, back to one of the lowest points of my life again, having to tell people that my shipments will be delayed because I'm actually gonna have to go home to my mother's funeral. But again, through all these things, it continues to make me realize I'm exactly where I'm at and what I need to be doing with Regenaissance. I'll stay with that because it's been so up and down, but the support and people I continue to meet carried me through the darkest times of my life to where now I'm finally, this year has been incredible. Not only the best year of the last 4 years, but the best year of my life. because of those things. I realized through all of this too, I had built my foundation for my previous 27 years out of sand. And even though the first year after my brother dying, I felt like I was doing nothing with my life, I was literally just rebuilding that foundation to where now it's rock solid. And yeah, I'm just now, it feels great because now I get to have these conversations with awesome people like you, and Regenaissance literally fuels me every single day, every time I wake up. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that.
It's an incredible story, man. Really, really incredible. It's amazing, like you said, the instantaneous up and downs that you experience through your life, and especially in your case, it's one of the most, volatile stories I've heard of someone, and of going through those swings and going through those peaks and then straight to a trough with your mother passing away and all the things with your brother and having to look after him and spending all that time there, and then, like you said, rebuilding yourself and building yourself up now higher than ever before. It's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing that. It's awesome.
Thank you.
And it's amazing where you're at now with everything, because I'm seeing what you're doing, and like you said, it's now more important than ever, and it almost takes a catastrophic event like what you said with your brother or with your mother to illuminate the fact that the system itself is broken. And even the things with you, how you went to the hospital and they didn't recognize that you were low on fluid and your hydration was, you weren't hydrated at all, extremely dehydrated, obviously, because you've been sick for 3 days prior, and it's just like small slip-ups like that actually cost people their lives.
Yep.
And like you said, it's not because like Western medicine and doctors malicious in their intent. It's just the way that they've been taught and the systems that have been put in place. They're so far outdated and almost archaic in a lot of senses. Obviously there's great things in them, and there's great treatments and surgeries and everything like that works, but the general person wouldn't need the Western medicine as much if the entire system was addressed from the front end, before something happens, rather than only trying to chase tail at the end after something's bad has happened, and then administering more drugs on top of an already sick person is just gonna it's not gonna help the situation. And what you're doing with the Regenaissance and spreading the message of how basically food's gonna make you or break you. The type of food that you eat is really gonna dictate how you live your life, and it's the simplest choice to make. And it's not like it tastes worse either. It's not like it's arduous and it's hard. It's like the best tasting stuff. It makes you feel the best. It makes you perform the best, recover the best, sleep the best. Your mental health's the best. There's literally no metric that's worse by doing this, but yet it's like almost repressed information on the general public, and especially in America where you are. It's almost criminal how, like you said, with the pasteurization of milk, like even just finding out about the healing properties of raw milk and how good it makes you feel drinking it, it's like, why is this illegal? It's not even just like not sold because there's not enough demand. It's like literally illegal. And it's the same in Australia, it's the same in New Zealand, it's the same basically every Western country. It's illegal. And it's just silly because it's preventing people from getting proper nutrition. It's like, how is raw milk illegal but Fruit Loops are promoted and advertised? Like, what? Like, who makes these rules?
Yeah. No, that's why I'm so huge on raw milk, because we think of things like pizza and ice cream thinking that you can't make those healthy, but raw milk ice cream with bee pollen and raw honey and all kinds of other ingredients, you can make that such a healthy dessert. With pizza, you can use raw cheese with sourdough and pasture raised farm fresh meats. all these amazing, because whenever I worked on the farm, my whole diet was the farm, and it was incredible. I never once thought about the garbage food that chemically rewires your brain and makes you addicted to it, like fast food and all the ultra processed food. And it's wild to me that in America, 73% of our food system now is ultra processed food. So it's not even freaking natural, real food. And I think that's by design for a lot of reasons. But yeah, obviously it's a disaster for our health. I mean, America continues to get worse and worse from a health standpoint, and they continue to push more and more new drugs like Ozempic. And the only ones that win are those people. Everyone else loses their health and money. And a lot of people don't even realize that.
Yeah, it's like what you were saying about, like, you can make quote unquote like bad food good and actually full of nutrients and fuel you. It's only, and it used to be like that, like not even that long ago. It's only when these corners started being cut, we can actually process this and it has a longer shelf life. So then, we don't have to turn it over so fast. We can place bulk orders. It's going to be cheaper. We're going to make a little bit more profit. And that mentality of just making a little bit more profit, and it's obviously a business at the end of the day, but it's like morals should come into, and ethics should come into play there. When you're cutting corners, and these corners, the downstream effect, obviously it's not an acute effect, it's not going to happen straight away, but the downstream effect of the chronic usage of your product is going to kill people. It's going to make people's quality of life plummet. Everything is going to get worse just in the name of a little bit more profit. And then that theory, or that mentality about how they run the business, basically is snowballed, decades down the line. And now where we're at now, where everyone is, dealing with some sort of mental health issue, which didn't used to be a thing. They're dealing with, physical health, as chronic physical issues, which also didn't used to be a thing. It's everywhere. It's prevalent everywhere. And the average American now is on roughly, average Americans on 4 medications a day. So there's over 1 billion prescription pills being taken every single day in America. And someone's making money off that, and everyone else in America that are taking these prescription pills are losing, right? And all that energy is getting sucked up towards these corporations in the name of profit. But they're killing the most amount of people ever, more than any, maybe not war, but more than any cartel, like more than any crime rate. Like, it's the biggest criminal organization in the world is these pharmaceutical companies. And you've seen it, like, especially over the last 4 years with, the whole pandemic and everything, is there's just massive amounts of profit being made off sick people. So if that's the case, why would they want people healthy? Why would they want people to flourish and feel great and feel amazing and never need to go see the doctor, when the bottom line of their business is to get leads, is to get clients? They need people sick. So obviously it's going to be pushed in that way. And it seems like it's been, like, especially, I went to America last year. I was in Montana, and there's a night and day difference between, Australian or New Zealand food and the American food. Even just across the border in Canada, I was in Canada just before that, and crossing the border, the same thing has double the ingredients, and it's all things that are banned in other parts of the world, but they're just pushed in America. And you can see what happens when that's the system in place. It's like 2/3 of people are overweight or obese. Everyone's sick. Everyone's feeling horrible. And it's like, how do we remedy this? And it's, in my opinion, I feel like it's through exactly what you're promoting, which is why it's such an awesome message and why I resonate with it so much, is because honestly, I see that as basically the only path that is illuminated right now that people can go down to reclaim their health and put it in their own hands rather than relying on someone else to fix it for them.
Yeah, and that's going back to whenever I was saying with like Twitter and that part of time of my life to where I was learning and unlearning a lot. it's essentially the same thing what I'm trying to do, because the boomer generation got completely duped.
Yep.
And then that knowledge was passed down to us. Because I haven't watched cable TV in forever. I remember though in 2022 when I went back home for Christmas and was watching TV with my parents, every single commercial break there was at least a minimum of 2 pharmaceutical commercials. And so it makes sense why we're so used to that, whenever that's just been so heavily pushed onto us, to where we've become desensitized to that. We're the only country. New Zealand allows it, but it's not like America. We are literally the only country in the world. Yeah, we're the only country in the world that does anything like that. And then you go into the doctor, and now they've been sold this lie too. So they push all kinds of pills or medication for every single issue that you tell them about. And it's just, now that's where we're at, and that's what we've become used to. We think now that instead of fixing our diet or stress or the things that are actually the root causes, we think that these medications are the one all be all pill to help solve our problems.
And it's almost like human nature. It's like everyone wants the easy way, and that the hard answer is take responsibility for your lifestyle and your actions. And if you're taught that from a young age, you will have that responsibility, and then you will live a healthy life. But the much easier thing with less effort input is just to take a pill. That's why you can see supplements and things like that. Even in the health space, the supplements are huge, massive. Like, people would way rather take a supplement than go for a walk in the morning or just go outside. They'd rather, I'll just take a vitamin D pill. I don't need to go get sunlight, and then that's the same thought pattern. That's, obviously these people are into fitness, so they're not typically sick, but most of the time they're still dealing with some sort of nutrient deficiency or health issue if they're running that, standard modern mindset of just take the easiest path possible and take a pill to solve your issue. And then you see that in the wider stream of things with, pharmaceutical drugs, fixing, you're basically just relinquishing responsibility of your lifestyle. So, and it almost, it reinforces what you're doing. Same with like Ozempic. Ozempic, it's not saying, okay, have this injection and you're gonna, change your whole lifestyle. You're going to start going on walks in the morning. You're going to start moving your body as much as possible. You're going to, do stretching. You're going to do all these different things that are going to improve your lifestyle. You're going to change the food you eat. Instead, it's like, I can still eat hamburgers and candy all day, every day, and I can still lose weight because it just makes me nauseous. So I don't want to eat that much. Then they get off it, and then they just have reinforced it for 2 years that they've been on, or 18 months. And now they're worse than ever, and they just bounce all the way back up. And then just get them back on Ozempic again. It's like a never-ending cycle. So like with the apparel brand, and I know you have the podcast as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the apparel brand, and the podcast, I guess, is like the whole brand itself. What's the main message that you're trying to, I guess, send into the mainstream narrative, and pierce and get the frequency just right so that it lands on the right ears and people actually do change and take that health into their own hands?
That's a good question. I will say, I genuinely believe that this is a huge missing link to why we are so unhealthy, because we've been so disconnected to where we've never seen where food comes from. This kind of goes back to you were saying with taking responsibility. When we outsource everything growing up now, a lot of folks in America, when you think of, say, 150 years ago, as a kid, you're doing way more responsible things, like working on a farm or a ranch, or in the industrialized cities, you were out working. Now we just outsource everything, and then we're being told to trust the science, trust all these institutions that they know better for us than we know for ourselves. And so just that massive disconnection is huge, because once you talk to farms and ranches, have that farm fresh food, it will click in your head. Because I have heard story after story after story from people reaching out to me on Regenaissance account saying the very same things. So to me, the message is, again, just bridging this gap, because to me it is a huge missing link to why we are such an unhealthy country, just because it's out of sight, out of mind. So yeah, I'll leave it with that.
Yeah. And do you feel like obviously the missing link is the food and getting the food from that straight from the source. But how's the best way to go about that? Is it information and just providing people with the information? Is it yourself starting some sort of operation, or encouraging people or donating to farmers and things like that to make the regenerative farming more, what's the word here, like more attractive to the industrial farmer? Because obviously regenerative farming is so much harder than doing the modern industrial farming methods, and you're getting all these kickbacks from the government, and to reinforce exactly what you're doing and just continue on this destructive path of destroying the soil and just destroying the animals and just destroying everything in the name of producing food. But it's shocking the quality of the food in comparison to what's actually possible, and most people don't even know that's possible. So I guess the question was, like, is the main goal to signal that through information, like through Twitter, through through the podcast, or what's the play?
Yeah, I would say it's two parts. So one would be the education and awareness from those things that you mentioned. But the second one is trying to make it as frictionless as possible for consumers to get easy access to this nutrient-dense food. Because again, like you said, we're lazy, but that's also because that's just how we were raised now, when you're so disconnected from your food. And it's hard to have access to, say, raw milk. Even though there's some spots in the country that you can get raw milk, it's still pretty difficult to get access. You might have to drive an hour away, 2 hours, just to get foods like that. And that's rather challenging, because the only way this is ever going to work and any changes are going to be made is if we vote by our dollar and how we spend our food for produce. Because if not, if we continue on with the path we're at now, to where we're supporting a majority conventional ag, no changes are going to be made. And this is also why it's two-part, because that helps with the farmers and having the incentives for them transforming their conventional practices to more regenerative. Because once they see the value and the money, because long term you will make more money as a regenerative farmer or rancher, but it takes a lot of capital up front. You have to completely transform your thinking, essentially, because the average age of a farmer is about 62, 63 now. A lot of these folks are third, fourth, fifth generational, and so that's all they've been known their whole life, is this type of lifestyle and farming. And now they're being told they need to completely rewire that. It takes time and patience and compassion. That's why I try not to.
That's a crazy stat, what you just said. You said the average age of a farmer was 62. Was that right?
It's really high. That's another reason why I have Regenaissance, and why I'm trying to make this as mainstream as possible. So, for example, yesterday I made the announcement that I'm sponsoring Bryce Mitchell, the MMA fighter, because I'm trying to make this message go as mainstream as fast as possible. Because of that reason. The average age of the farmer is only getting higher and higher. Hardly any of them have an heir to pass down this land to, because hardly any folks are in agriculture, especially our generations. And so I'm trying to really make it more enticing for folks to get in. I mean, so many folks are already sick of the monotonous lifestyle of a urban city. They realized how, again, disconnected they are from nature and food. So I'm trying to help, again, make some things like these as frictionless as possible and make it easy. Because if these changes don't happen, who knows what will happen. To me, what will happen is the food system that's already extremely centralized will only become more centralized, and the ultra-processed food will only get worse. So, yeah, that's why education is so vital. But I have a lot of hope. I'm seeing so much, especially on Instagram, more and more folks are waking up to all these realizations. And it'll be interesting to see, because you're up against the media, and they obviously lie a lot, and specifically raw milk, they lie a hell of a lot. I can give an example for that. So the farm in California, essentially provides all of the raw dairy for California and a lot of places around the country, is called Raw Farm by Mark McAfee. He's the founder. And recently they had to recall everything because of an E. coli outbreak for, I think they said, 10 different people around the country. And there were so many articles written about all
I
that.
saw that. Yeah.
It turns out that they didn't actually have an E. coli outbreak. I
Yeah.
hardly didn't see any articles after that stating that. They only want to destroy raw milk. And as this becomes more and more mainstream, more articles like that will only be coming out more. I mean, it's kind of, it's not the same industry. But it's like Andrew Huberman that just got annihilated the past couple of days or tried to get annihilated. I think that same thing will happen with raw milk and other parts of agriculture as it becomes more mainstream, to where all these articles will try to get the general population to still believe that raw milk will kill you, it should be illegal, and that the farms only want this for money. Because the last thing I'll say, that I will never understand this, why the hell would a farmer risk his whole entire operation for an industry that already doesn't make a whole lot of money? You work 7 days a week. Why would they risk all of that to sell raw milk if they knew it was going to kill people? That question, it just makes no fucking sense to me. But then again, people just willfully ignore that. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's there's no logic in these sort of arguments, and like when it gets, I almost feel the more mainstream things get, the less logic there is, you know, and the more just repetitive rhetoric is spread. If someone else says it, no one actually stops to think, oh, is this true? Like, let me actually look into this myself. And people just kind of repeat things. And you'll see that all the time. You see it on Twitter, you see it on Instagram all the time, you know, as people just repeating, like when they see something like that's out of their norm, out of their normal life, say it's like the raw milk, or say it's like not cooking meat and things like this, like just eating some raw meat and things like this, people lose their mind, you know, and they're very, very quick to pass that judgment, but they don't even know the real truth, or they haven't even tried it themselves. They've only read or heard about it from someone, and then they just take that for fact. And it's that whole mentality was what you were sort of talking about before, about just trust the experts. Like, don't trust yourself. Like, they know better than you about yourself. You know, they know best about everything. Just trust them. They have your best interest at heart. And people just follow that. And it's like the most mainstream things right now are almost the most illogical things, you know? Like, how is people recommending cereal? Like, do you see this the other day? It's like the news stations all running, you know, recommending cereal for dinner. It's like, what? To save on money. And you can just get like ground beef. And it's basically, it's like so cheap. You can just eat ground beef and it's going to be so much better for you. Obviously, it's not going to be the best quality if it's the cheaper kind, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better than cornflakes or bloody Fruit Loops and things like that. But people just don't even stop to think about what they're writing. And I see these like headlines like every second day. It's just like one of them saying like one day in the sun is going to increase your risk of heart failure, and just ridiculousness. It's like, how do you think people survived 100, 300, 500, 3,000 years ago if they couldn't go outside without getting heart disease, and like if they couldn't eat meat without getting cancer? Like, this stuff just doesn't make sense.
Same for raw milk again. That's why I always continue to go back to raw milk, because we've been drinking it for thousands and thousands of years, and this plays well to majority of folks view life in the world just black and white. They never think of nuance. And like you're saying, what they're told. So we're always told milk should be pasteurized because it used to kill people. That's true. It technically did, but there's missing so much context behind it all. So in the 1800s, as the Industrial Revolution was happening, the conditions in these cities were disgusting. Like New York City, I mean, when you're just riding in horseback all the time, they would just shit everywhere, and that would bring disease and flies everywhere. So the conditions already in itself are disgusting. And then after the War of 1812 ended, America was getting all of their whiskey essentially from Britain, and that ended. So they propped up all these whiskey distilleries. And so take New York City, for example. I think they had anywhere between 4,000 to 7,000 whiskey distilleries. And the goal was to try to up the production of milk for cows. And so they would attach these cows behind these distilleries in small confined areas, no sunlight, no pasture. And then they were fed these nasty leftover whiskey grains. And this produced what was called swill milk, which was this bluish tint milk. And it caused a lot of mortalities, specifically with infants, if you look at the rates. But in rural America, that wasn't happening with raw milk. That's because raw milk itself is not the issue. It's how you take care of the animal and what you put into the animal is why that milk was so sick. Because I even found old New York Times articles from 1858 and 1878 talking about these very things. So there's so much info out there stating these things, but yet we're just sold this lie that it killed people, so we should never drink pasteurized dairy. But that's just so wild. It only took me a couple Google searches to find that, but no one ever does that, just because we've offset everything, because we don't want to think about anything, like you're saying, taking responsibility, because now you have to take away time from Netflix or watching something on your phone.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're saying about is, of course, the milk is going to be toxic if the animal is toxic. And it's like, if you have to pasteurize the milk, otherwise you die. How do babies live when they're breastfeeding from their mother? It's like, that's raw. You're not like getting that milk and then heating it up ultra high temperature and then giving it to the baby, which is honestly, like, with the way things are going, I would not be surprised if that's like a message that would start to get pushed. And then it's like, you have to do baby formula. Breast milk is dangerous. Like, and obviously it's the most nourishing thing a baby can have. That's why they're having it. And it's just idiocracy, really.
It is, because you also look at some of the drawings they made during those times. They would literally hold up cows that were just so sick they couldn't even stand on their own feet, and they'd still milk them. So it's just like, of course that's going to make you sick. I mean, they're literally on the brink of death. And it's just, those things are never ever brought up.
No, it's a very surface level way of thinking. And like you said, it's almost like the same thing with like the boomers saying about the pharmaceuticals. It's the same with that sort of stuff. It's like they've been told something their whole life, and now there's some young guy that thinks he knows everything because he is on Twitter, and they're just like disbelieve it because they've just trusted the mainstream narrative their whole life. And it's worked up until 2 decades ago, until there started being all these crazy ideas being pushed that didn't have their best interest at heart. Like, the news did used to be the news. It still maybe was a little bit of a psyop, obviously, but at least they did just report the news without a bias and things like that. Now it's just pure propaganda and what they're pushing. And the great thing is now is everyone has access to the internet. And on the internet, you have access to basically all of the knowledge ever recorded. So if you just spend like a little bit of time, you can quite quickly and quite easily find out the best method to do for whatever the situation you're in is. Whether that's for your nutrition, for your health, or you're dealing with some sort of skin condition that you're not sure what it is. You can just spend a little bit of time, instead of, like you said, instead of watching Netflix, instead of scrolling on your phone on Twitter, you can literally just, within 30 minutes, you can get on a good roll finding out exactly what you're looking for. Maybe you have to scroll for a bit and find some obscure information. Maybe you have to search Twitter to find some guy that's been posting about it. But half the time, that stuff is what works. And it's that almost suppressed information that's the most powerful.
You bring up the great point about the internet. That's the one thing. I'm very hard on the boomer generation for a lot of reasons, but I give them grace for the fact that they did not have access to the internet. Because I'm going to push back to your statement about the news. They had been psyoped their whole lives. One example I can give is Ansel Keys and the demonization of saturated fat overall and just butter.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Because then all I drank growing up was skim milk, and it was low fat everything. And that's because that's what they were told. And so obviously it's easy to believe that, especially when you don't have the internet. I mean, you can go to the libraries and whatnot, but that is way more difficult than what we could be doing now, to where we literally have a supercomputer on our phone and can just find out all that information for ourselves. But that's also why, again, education, unlearning and learning is so critical for Regenaissance, because I'm actually finding the truth for it all, and I want to just relay that info to people and try to make it as easy as possible. I'm working really hard on this educational piece for my website to where you can just go there and there'll be all kinds of blog posts on the history of raw milk, the actual nutrition details. I'm trying to make it all as easy as possible again, because without the more friction that's added for this, the less likely people are going to take the initiative to even go to, say, a farmer's market or a farm. So yeah, I'll leave it at that too. Oh, you there?
Yeah, sorry, you just cut out for a second there.
Okay.
You were talking about, I mean, no, you're back. You were just talking about like people taking the initiative, and you just want it how you want your website, and you want the whole message that you share to be as frictionless as possible, right?
Yeah, just because, again, the more friction and steps it takes for them to take the initiative for something like grabbing raw milk or visiting a ranch or farm, the less likely they're going to take that initiative. So I'm trying to make that as easy as possible. All of the knowledge is there for them. Yeah, and for example, I just want to have the situation where a friend is talking to another friend about all these changes that they've made for their life and how much better it is, and that other friend might be interested in learning more. You can just send them that website, and it has everything there, from even questions like, all right, now I can go visit a farm or ranch. What questions should I be asking and looking for in terms of, can I trust the actual food that I'll be buying from this place? Because again, trying to make it as frictionless as possible for folks.
Yeah, and that's a great strategy, because especially now people want the least amount of effort, or at the like first sign of discomfort or difficulty, people go back to the easier option, and there's always going to be an easier option. So it's almost like a race to try and make this information as easy to access and spread as possible, because at the end of the day, it's you're healing like the entire nation or the entire world, right, by spreading this message and this what exactly what you're saying about health. And it's so easy, and voting with your dollar, like you said, is such a powerful thing, because if everyone tomorrow stopped buying these industrial farming, industrial ag produced foods, they would change instantly, because it's all a business. And if there's no revenue coming in, they're going to change, and they're going to get with the time. So it's the more people that take that initiative for their own health. And it's not like it's only benefiting one person, it's benefiting everyone. Everyone gets better. The entire world, like the nature itself, heals. Like you said, regenerative farming works with nature, whereas industrial agriculture works against it. And it's doing everything it can to fight, nature and the cycle of how crops grow, and how how cattle, everything is raised. It's fighting against it rather than working with it, which is the traditional way to do things. And it's only very recently that we've started doing this, is this industrial agriculture. And extremely quickly, everyone's gotten sick. Extremely quickly, the soils have been depleted. So the food that we now grow is a fraction of the mineral and vitamin content of what it used to be, just a century ago. And we've been using this, working with the land for thousands of years, and it's worked. And all we're doing now is just trying to change it in the name of profit. It's almost like evil just chasing money, but you're destroying everyone around you, and you're destroying the planet. But it's just strange, right?
It is, and even that's why, in terms of supplementation, that's why it's so good to really supplement with magnesium, because we're so deficient in that, because that's been completely depleted.
Yeah.
And to all the listeners that might not think voting with your dollar actually works, look at what happened with Bud Light. They had that massive campaign. They got absolutely destroyed online, and their sales tanked. And they actually made changes. I know they still have their stuff that you might disagree with, but they genuinely changed after that, because their business absolutely tanked. And so you could do the very same thing with agriculture and those huge conglomerates.
And it's almost like they have to make a huge mistake for it to happen, when it should be the other way around. Everyone should have the knowledge to make that choice themselves, and you hope that they'd pick the right choice, and you'd hope that they'd pick their health and the planet's health, right, rather than the profit of some guys.
That's why I think that education is huge for that, because most folks aren't aware that the mistake's already in place. It's the fact that, like you said, our soil is depleted, we have garbage food, and it makes us so sick. You should not feel like absolute garbage after eating a meal, but then an hour and a half later you're hungry again because the food that you just ate that made you feel like shit did not actually give you any good nutrition at all, so you're just hungry again, and that's why we overeat so much on top of all the portions and whatnot. But there's so many things that people are just not aware of. The mistakes are already there for massive conventional ag.
Yeah. And for someone that's listening, there's going to be someone that's, probably majority, to be honest, that are they're still voting with their dollar, in my opinion, the wrong way, and supporting industrial agriculture. So what would your suggestion be to, say, someone listening now that wants to look after their health, but they're just not sure how to go about it?
So I'll speak in the context of America. It's definitely trying to find a good local farmer or rancher, whether that be going to a local farmers market if you have those. There are all kinds of maps, like it's the website's regenerativefarmersofamerica.com. They have a massive map. There's eatwild.com. For raw milk, there's Weston A. Price Foundation has their own raw milk finder. I think there's another one called getrawmilk.com.
Yeah.
I would look for all of those. Those are all great resources. But I think that's the first step, is doing that and actually having a conversation. Because it also, for some reason too, it actually is kind of intimidating. I know for a lot of people it's intimidating to meeting these folks. They're just again because we've been so disconnected. So there's that tension. But they are some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. Switching into agriculture was the greatest decision of my entire life. And I continue to meet just more and more amazing folks. They love to talk to you. They would talk your ear off about educating on everything. So that will really get the snowball rolling in your head, for sure. Because again, when you have these conversations and you actually go visit these places, it's really indescribable. You really start feeling more connected to this world and your food. Because I might just be saying that for myself, but I continue to hear just story after story after story of the same thing. And so that's why I think that could really work for a lot of people.
Totally, man. And like, just looking into it yourself and then spreading that word, and like once you get the results yourself, then you can confidently say, this is so much better, I feel amazing. All I did was just swap out the grocery store food for this food here, like a very small change. Honestly, not even going to cost you that much more. You don't actually need to eat that much food if the food is rich in nutrients, which regenerative farmed food is. It's so much better for you in every single metric. And it's like one candle lights 1,000 others, and like I feel in this sense of things, like you're that, and what you're doing with the Regenaissance is that one candle. It's like you're really making it your mission to spread that word. Because like I've known about it. Like I've known about regenerative farming. I can't even say it. Regenerative farming for like years now, and I've done it, but I've never actually. And I like tell clients and things to do it, but I've never actually thought, this is a huge issue. This is what I need to push. And I've never seen anyone else do it either. Obviously, I've seen Walt Harris talking about it and things like that, but he's farming. He's busy farming. But to actually make that, your main focus and your work, I'm 100% sure you're going to, save lives with what you're doing here. Not just like make people's quality of life better, but literally like save thousands of people's lives. So it's actually very, very valiant what you're doing. And it seems so little, but it's like I said, it's like one candle. You making this your work to push this message is going to light 1,000 others and spread that far and wide. And I know it will.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, you're spot on with that. That's why when I had the idea for the brand, I realized there's this huge missing piece. So there's folks like Will Harris, and there's all kinds of other agriculture podcasts, but they're usually all hosted by people that had been in agriculture their whole lives. And so I realized I had a unique strength to where I'm just a normie and have been my whole life. And so I could really help bring all of the other folks like me, which is a majority of folks, to the food producers, to where that's only like 1.5% of America. And it seems to be working. And so that's why I realized there's that huge gap, because no one was really trying to bridge that in the context of just folks that have never been in this, because majority of the ones that are trying to push for this movement and educate have already been born and raised into it.
Totally. Yeah. And it almost takes like one person from that side, which, like you said, like a normie dude that's not like a traditional farmer. You know, you haven't been raised on a farm, you haven't done it your whole life. Like a normie guy coming from the city, coming from you know, your old career, coming into this and then seeing the benefits and then spreading it back to the other normies, you know, and you know the way that your message can resonate with these people because you grew up with them and you've been around them your whole life. So you know how to pierce that missing part of their thought process to make them see this issue as it is. And it's a massive issue, and it's a massive fix as well, is literally just changing the food you eat. So I'd highly recommend everyone that is listening, if you aren't already, you know, get as high quality food as you possibly can, and you're going to see a difference within 1 or 2 days. Like, I promise you that. Like, you eat high quality food, instantly you'll feel energized. There's no more, unless you eat like an absolute madman and eat like a kilo of meat, you know. But like, if you're just eating a regular meal, you're going to feel instantly so much better. It digests easier. You just feel, you can think clearer, you can talk faster, you're going to perform better in your career, you're going to just do everything at a higher playing field just from fueling yourself with actual fuel. It's like using a race car. So you're the race car and you're giving it, you know, vegetable oils to try run on. Of course it's going to like misfire. Of course it's not going to go that fast. You know, as soon as you change that oil out and you put racing fuel in, you're going to go much faster and you're going to go quick and you're going to win the race of your life, you know. And you don't want to trust that someone else that you don't know, who's working in a business purely for profit, and they profit off giving you vegetable oil fuel, is going to, by the good of their heart, give you racing oil at the cost of their business. Of course it's not going to happen. You have to take that responsibility yourself. You have to educate yourself. You have to reach out to guys like yourself to understand the impacts that this is having, and just make those simple changes. Just eat, contrary to popular belief, red meat's not going to give you cancer. You know, just eat high quality steak. If you eat one steak every day for a month, a high quality steak, I guarantee you'll perform better in every single metric of your life.
Absolutely,
so just agree. Do it.
And because I also have another example too, that actually yesterday on my podcast, he's a pig farmer in California, and he gave an example of just one of his customers. They used to buy pork from the store and it would just wreck them. And they were just kept raving to this farmer about their pork and how they're finally able to digest it and feel so much better. And that's, again, they are farming and doing everything the right way versus the pork that they would buy in stores. And there's so many examples of that I could give too, because it is true. The quality definitely matters. And the only thing I'd like to add to, going back to just the black and white viewpoint, we also have a black and white viewpoint on health, specifically with our health, because foods that might be really good for someone, you might struggle with a little bit differently, because not everyone could digest A1 raw cow's milk. But then there's A2 cow's milk, there's goat milk, there's other alternatives. But again, you just have to educate and understand the nuance with everything, but really with your health.
Totally, 100%. And yeah, like you said, it's like what works for one person isn't going to work for everyone. And like my girlfriend, she can't have raw milk because she's, allergic to the actual protein inside of it. And we've tried A1, A2, but we still can't manage to make it work. Her mouth keeps swelling up, so it's unfortunate. But it's not gonna work for everyone. But there's definitely ways that you can mitigate the risk from eating, like from what you're eating. Like she still eats red meat every single day. Like we still have pasture raised eggs, like all these sort of things. You can still get your nutrients from other things if you cannot digest one thing. So don't just think if one thing didn't work for you, nothing will, because that's a mentality I see so many people falling into. And it's not just with food, it's with everything in their life. If it's like a business, if it's something in their career, like, oh, I couldn't do it this one time, I'm just not going to try anymore because I know I'm going to fail. That's the only way you're going to fail. So if you see some sort of issue come up with trying high quality food, maybe you're just doing it slightly wrong. Just reach out. More information's never going to hurt. Reach out to the Regenaissance website. Surely on the blog there'll be something that can help you. Just more information is going to help clear the path for you. And you might see you just did something slightly wrong in the preparation or in how you're consuming food or whatever it may be that could alleviate the issue for you instantly and then have you feeling that top tier like you should be.
Amen. I have nothing else to add to that. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I wanted to quickly ask you as well is, like you said it just earlier, and I think it's a massive thing that you've just done is having Bryce Mitchell, the UFC fighter, sign on to the Regenaissance. So like walk me through that. That's massive for the brand, right?
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely thrilled because he's also, even before Regenaissance, he'd always been one of my favorite fighters.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is because he's a farmer too.
Yeah.
So I just found, it was actually way more straightforward than I thought possible. He, on his Instagram profile, had his manager. I clicked on his manager and he had this sign-up form. I filled it out, and Bryce loves Regenaissance and my idea, so he was immediately on board. It was really fast. This happened in a week, essentially. So now, in a couple months, I'm going to be visiting his farm and shooting some videos there and doing my podcast with him. And then later that month of May, he's coming to Austin for a meet and greet, and then just doing more content together. Because
awesome.
He's a farmer, but I know he wants to learn a lot about regenerative agriculture and all this. So I could not be more thrilled for that and trying to really push the message for that. And then definitely with raw milk. Because it makes sense with athletes. He's now, at first I was pretty shocked because I had on the podcast Travis Brown, a former MMA fighter.
Yep.
Him and his wife, Ronda Rousey, they have a regenerative farm up in Oregon. I was able to talk to him and had an awesome conversation. Another post on Instagram made it to Misha Tate, another UFC fighter, and now we talk because she's really interested in homesteading and just all of this. I'm having Kyle Kingsbury on my podcast next month, another former MMA fighter. But it makes sense why they're all obviously health focused, but now they've all come to the same realizations of where the hell is my food coming from and realizing why it matters. So I've realized I'm trying to, infiltrate the athlete space, because I know for all athletes, you want to have high performance. So I see this as a very good starting point to really making it go mainstream in the athlete space.
Totally. Like the reach that even just like Travis Brown, and like you said, Bryce Mitchell, and I saw that thing with Misha Tate as well. Like it's massive, huge. Like it's just so many more eyeballs on the brand, and then those eyeballs are going to convert to better quality of life, because if the more people that see it, the more people are going to read about it, the more people are going to learn, and the more people that are going to change their lifestyle from that. It's like a knock-on effect of just them seeing someone doing something, seeing someone wearing that mustard shirt behind you, and it seems like something so little, but it's actually so powerful because it starts that knock-on effect of just questioning one thing, and then you're going to question everything. And then, the most healthy guys I know, do everything exactly opposite of what the mainstream narrative is. It's just completely night and day difference from what they're told to do as to what they do, and the fruit, bears, and they're the healthiest looking and performing people I know. And then you look at the people that are pushing, the health advice, and it's honestly like comical. Well, it's almost comical, but it's almost insidious as well. Is these are the people giving health advice? Like, have you seen who your minister of health is?
Yep, I've seen a lot of those pictures of ours in like Belgium and other countries, and it's just a disaster.
Yeah, it's definitely a disaster. So, like, leading from the front with people that are athletes, obviously they're high performers. Obviously, they care about their health, and that's a super easy way to infiltrate the mainstream narrative, because a lot of people watch sports, and a lot more people than ever watch UFC, watch MMA, and having not just a unknown guy, but like Bryce Mitchell's like known worldwide. So that is like absolutely huge. And like Travis Brown, like Ronda Rousey was like the biggest thing in fighting for like half a decade, maybe even longer than that. So them spreading the message as well is just tremendous, and it's massive. So it's awesome to see that you're making massive waves in the industry, really, and really pushing that message to as many people as possible, as quick as possible. Because the longer you wait, the more people are gonna die, essentially.
Yeah, but that's also I'm very hopeful from the sheer fact that it's only been 10 months since I've launched this business, and it's already making the reach
Wow.
to those people.
Yeah,
Um,
that's amazing.
so that's why I'm very optimistic, and I see it on Instagram a lot too. I know it's just social media; it's not real life, but at the same time, there's still a lot of truth to the tides are turning with our food system and specifically raw milk. But again, that's why I'm trying to really make it as frictionless as possible, because the only way this is actually going to work is actually making those changes with our dollar.
Totally, man. Well, it's been really, really good having you on and learning. I've learned a whole bunch from you, and it's really an honor to have you on, because I'm very certain, you're 10 months in now. It's like an exponential growth that's happening, right? And it's just going to be amazing to see, you leading from the front and spreading that message and saving all these people around not just America, but around the whole world, and making them live a higher quality of life. Because that's what life's all about, is, actually being able to enjoy those moments, not living in pain, purely from, self-inflicted misinformation that, you just haven't bothered to check, and you've just trusted the narrative. And getting the word out there is gonna, cause huge changes. So it's awesome to be able to have you on, man, and talk to you about all these things.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The last thing I'll add too, because you bring up a lot of great points there. Specifically in America, we've normalized having bad back and joint pains by 30 and all these health issues. And I don't know, it's interesting, especially hearing parents saying how much they love their kids, that they'd be willing to die for them than live for them. And you have to take control of your responsibility for your health, not just because of you, but your family, your significant other. For the people that want to become parents, you should take your health seriously, because A, epigenetics is real, and B, you're passing down this knowledge and you're leading by example. So whenever you see an unhealthy parent, or no, whenever you see an unhealthy child, especially in America now, you pretty much 99% positive that their parents are going to be very unhealthy themselves. And it's very hard for me. I'm more at peace with my mom. I will never truly be at peace with my brother, but it's tough thinking about how my mom's never going to be here for my future children. And I think about all the people that are in that same situation. So that's why I have this, because you can change and you can be healthy for your kids, but also your grandkids, whatever you see fit as your family. But it starts with you actually realizing it's up to you to take responsibility for your health.
Totally. Yeah, you almost have to be. People think it's selfish to care about their health, and they're always too busy doing something else for other people, and then that causes them to their health to plummet, mentally and physically. And they think it's selfish to look after themselves, but it's actually the least selfish thing you can do, because you looking after yourself and taking your health into your own hands, you're going to show up as the best possible version to all the people that you love for as long as possible, and doing that thing that may be deemed selfish is actually the most selfless thing you can do. Because like I said, you're just going to show up as the best version of you. You're not going to be a shell of a person. You're going to be able to throw the ball around with your grandson. You're going to be able to pass down all the knowledge that you learned from your father or your mother or even your grandparents down to your children or your grandparents, because you're going to be there and you're going to be present in the moment mentally and physically, because you're not dealing with any other issues, purely from just the food that you chose to eat when you made that change when you were 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, or it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still make that change, and you're going to live a healthier, longer, higher quality of life just from doing that.
Agreed. Absolutely agree on that.
Awesome too. Well, tell everyone where they can find you: Twitter, website, podcast, everything.
Yeah, so my website is theregenaissance.co, and it's just the Regenaissance podcast. You can find me on YouTube and all the other podcast streaming platforms. And in terms of social media, I believe both of them also are just the Regenaissance, and you can just find all that info there. And then lastly, because I post stuff too on my personal Twitter page, and for that, it's just Regenaissance Man.
Awesome. It's a good name. It's a good name. No, that's awesome, dude. Absolute pleasure having you on. Like I said, learned a whole bunch, and I'm sure everyone listening has as well. And it's, very awesome story, very inspiring. Shows you it's never too late to, not just turn your life around, but, affect everyone else around you and really turn the tides of the entire society.
Yeah, man. No, this was a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
No worries, my man. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.